Good morning, everybody. This is Martin John, and we are here to talk about the Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching is an ancient text written about 600 BCE. It's been around a while, and we are, what Tao of the Day is, what we're here to talk about and what we're here to share is the wisdom of the Tao, the wisdom of living a more reasonable life. Living a life in which we don't have to be constantly thrown to and fro just because we have, we're not getting what we want. When we talk about living a reasonable life, what we mean is we live a life in which we're not asking other things to be a certain way for us. Yes, your childhood could have been different. But it wasn't. It's not going to be. It was what it was. And I'm not trying to say that it was okay. I'm not trying to say that it was right. I am trying to say that it was what it was. And so rather than living your life wishing that it was different, we could learn from the experiences that we've had. And yes, that could be very difficult for some people to even hear. But understanding that we're here to live our lives. And if we get caught up in wanting things to be different, then we're not focused on living our lives. We're focused on things being different. And so what I do every morning, 6 a.m., Monday through Friday, and sometimes other times and what have you, is I present the Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching is an ancient text talking all about the nature of the universe, the underlying objective truth of the universe. So you live your life in a subjective experience. You, like for myself, I am male, grew up inner city Chicago. The experiences I've had when I was a kid being bullied, being beat by my parents, or my addictions, or all of those things come with me. Wherever I go, no matter how much I want to compartmentalize, no matter how much I want to be like, I don't bring my work and home life don't cross. They do. We could fool ourselves into thinking they don't. We can tell ourselves over and over that, no, I'm approaching this without my past experiences, right? Every relationship you have is growing off of other relationships. And no matter how much you want to think that they are not, right? They are like, you are not being affected by your past. You are. Now, awareness and continuing to grow and learning from your experiences, that can get you less hinged on living from the past and living from past experiences. But that is really kind of what the Tao talks about, right? We are seeing the objective truth of the universe, our connection. We're seeing the objective truth of the universe, our collective consciousness. We're understanding love is the way to communicate and all of those things, right? We're seeing that through our subjective experience. But our subjective experience gets so intense sometimes, doesn't it? We can get to the place of our subjective experiences being the thing that we think are real. We think other people are cutting us off in the road. We think our boss is out to get us. But these are subjective experiences. And even if those things are true, we don't have to live our lives wanting them to change. Right? We can live our lives in a space where we allow ourselves the freedom to be who we are and surrender to this moment without having to submit to the will of others and be whole. So what I do on this program is invite you up to pick a number between 1 and 81. When you do, I'll read that Tao for you, and we'll go through it together, and we'll see what that has to offer. I'm often interested in where the baseline is for you and why that number came up. This is like an oracle, so it's kind of like picking a card out of a deck and having a psychic or whatever read it. I mean, I'm no psychic, but I connect things together. That's my practice. And so what I invite you to do is come up, and then we'll talk a little bit, and we'll get a baseline for what's going on in your life. And then I'll ask you to pick a number. And when you pick a number, you will find that that number is connected to the things that you're I don't want to say struggling with, but the things that you're dealing with at that moment. So if anybody has a number you want to pick between 1 and 81, I'd love to have you up, and then we could chat. So in the meantime, I went to my website where I have a random number generator and my Tao, and I picked randomly. I picked the random number generator today, and I got number 16. Number 16, stillness and integration. It is it's a big lesson, stillness and integration, because in our society, especially if you're living in one of the first world nations of the world, and most of us probably are. You can't imagine that, people in second or third world countries want to spend their time listening to Noom, but maybe they do. Stillness and integration is interesting because it requires stillness. And the idea is that stillness allows space for integration. Integration of what? Integration of what is learned through action. Okay, so if you act all the time, and we'll see this in the verse when I read it, if you're acting all the time, you're going to succumb to anxiety. So no matter how productive you want to be, stillness is an important part of life. And that's interesting for me today because in my Panda Planner, in my daily planner, my affirmation today is I am creative and productive. I have to remember today about stillness. I have to remember that stillness is a part of life that I really need to embrace. That stillness is what makes all of this action worthwhile, because it needs to integrate. I need to learn from it. The other day, so I have a rental property behind my house. When I acquired this property, there were 2 houses on it, and one of the houses has this back room that had these sort of compressed paper tiles on the ceiling, and those tiles fell. And so the ceiling fell in. No one was back there at the time, which I'm grateful for, but the ceiling fell in. And I realized when they put the roof in and all of that, they didn't have any ventilation. And so, they have vents, but they didn't leave room for ventilation up there. So, problematic, right? Like there was no ability for air to flow. And that created, moisture. That moisture then, allowed those paper tiles to collapse, and it fell in. Now I'm sort of sitting on a number of projects, right? I have a commission that I'm working on. I have I told someone I would record a meditation, and now the ceiling. So everything is starting to come to a head, and I need to be able to focus on those things. Now, I haven't allowed stillness in. A lot of this, like pure stillness. I have been doing lots of stuff. And so I need to be able to allow stillness in. And today I'm going to do things, but I got to do things from a state of stillness. I got to still my mind, especially. So let's go ahead and read this and see what this has for me today. Being empty of mind is of the utmost importance, and it is to be guarded with fervor. We have all seen states of action arise, and always beyond it returns stillness. When any state of action is complete, it naturally returns to stillness. This allows integration of what arose from action, which is the natural cycle of maturation. If stillness and integration cannot be achieved, constant action will lead to anxiety and wild movements. Yielding to stillness makes one impartial, and all particular things fall away. Then, when it is time to die, one can be impartial to that as well. When this one ends, we talk about death. And it's interesting because it comes all the way to that, right? It goes all the way to your death. And what's nice is that we remember that we're not going towards a destination. We're hurtling towards death. So no matter what I do in my life, no matter how I live my life, if I live my life full of anxiety, or if I live my life full of stillness, or if I live my life balanced, or whatever, the whole point of this, the whole direction that this is going is towards my own death. So what this is saying is this is a cycle. This is a cycle of you're going to act and then you're going to be still. You're going to act and then you're going to be still. When the ceiling fell, I think that was on Saturday, my mind went to, okay, well, I pull the ceiling down completely and then assess the situation. Now I have an answer to what I need to do, and I know what I need to do, and I'll go ahead and do it. But I didn't. Yesterday was not productive at all. And so because of that, I'm in this state now where I'm sort of like, oh, well, I got to do these things, right? And then it's like, wait a minute, like, I need to assess the situation. I need to be still. I need to allow this. Like, this thing happened. Like, let it sink in. It's okay. Like, nobody's being affected by it. Everything's fine. Now, when this and my meditation and my commission are all done, does that mean I'm just going to be done with everything? No, it just means that I'll be able to be still. This allows integration from what arose from action. There are things that are happening around me physically that I have aligned with in my life, in my mind. I have aligned with these things for some reason, and then these things are happening. Am I upset that the ceiling fell in? No. Am I frustrated? No. I am feeling a little overwhelmed because there's a lot going on, but I'm taking it all one step at a time. And hopefully today I can go out and I can buy the materials that I need to fix the problem. And then when the problem's fixed, it'll all be good. So that's sort of what is happening in that realm. And so I'm going to go ahead and read this again, and we're going to stop through it. So we're going to go through it line by line. I like doing this with you guys. If you want to come up and pick a number, going through these line by line, because reading the whole thing and piecing all of the pieces together is not easy. It's so much easier to be able to read a line, examine it, read the next line, connect it to the last one, and examine that. So being empty of mind is of the utmost importance and is to be guarded with fervor. It's interesting when I was writing this translation, what I focused on so much was for this one is that it is a job to be empty of mind. It is not something that you just get to be. Especially in the world that we live in, especially in a world full of stuff, especially in a world full of action, especially in a world like we are in the first world, so hell-bent on productivity. Emptiness is a gift. Emptiness of mind meaning no judgment. You're not thinking about others. Emptiness of mind means you don't have a destination. You don't have an identity. You don't have any of that. Being empty of mind is of the utmost importance. And yet, how many people do you know have an empty mind? We might call those that we have engaged that have empty of mind, like special, or we might call them, touched or whatever. It's just like, oh, how cute, they're empty of mind. But imagine if you had an empty mind, not that your mind had no value, that you, intelligent and all of these things, but didn't allow yourself to be guided by all the judgments, by all the intelligence, by all the labels, by all the identity that you carry with you. Being empty of mind is of the utmost importance and is to be guarded with fervor. It takes a lot. It means we have to practice being empty of mind. As soon as something comes up, we fill our mind with all the things that inspires, right? Like I could talk about like that ceiling collapsing, and I could just let it control me. And it did for a time. But I, got my wits about me, calmed down a bit, allowed it to be, stabilized it, got to know everything I needed to know, because the not knowing can be so difficult. We have all seen states of action arise, and always beyond it returns stillness. So this is the thing for us creatives. Those of us that are creative, we have all seen states of action arise. We're creative. We're doing something right now. We're allowing ourselves to be here present with the action, and we are feeling good, right? This is being in the groove, and this is being in the flow that everyone loves to talk about. The problem with being in the flow, or the problem is you will eventually come out of the flow, and you might not be able to just call upon it at another point. Always beyond that flow, always beyond that action comes stillness. You will return to stillness. And if you've identified with the flow, that stillness is going to be something that is going to kind of condemn you. That is something that will come in and be problematic. Because you're like, oh, I lost the flow, right? Now, my identity isn't being in flow any longer. And I have to be okay with being still. And maybe I'll never find the flow again. Maybe this is it. But we've all seen that happen, right? This is why being empty of mind is important. Because if we're empty of mind, when we're in flow, we're not identifying with it. We're not allowing ourselves to be a part of it. We're just allowing it to happen through us. And that state of flow will pass, and we will be in a state of stillness. I'm going to read this section again. Being empty of mind is of the utmost importance and is to be guarded with fervor. We have all seen states of action arise, and always beyond it returns stillness. Why do those two things have anything to do with each other, right? Being empty of mind and action states. Because action states get us to believe we are something specific. Action states, when we're in action, when we're in flow, when we're doing, these are how we're identifying. We're identifying ourselves from this space of action. We're identifying ourselves from this ability to identify with what it is we're doing. So now we have, this is what these first two lines, this first section is saying. It's saying, look, being empty of mind is important. And then there are action states. Action states make you identify with yourself, with me, which means your mind is not empty. When any state of action is complete, it naturally returns to stillness. Well, but if I identify with the action state, then I'm putting myself in a position to be let down anyway, because it's going to naturally return to stillness. And then it defines that as saying this allows integration of what arose from action, which is the natural cycle of maturation. This is how you mature. You mature through the stillness after action. So you have action, and if you don't identify with that action, and you just allow that action to pass, right? So you're in the flow for a couple weeks, and then all of a sudden, boom, you hit a lull. You hit a lull. What do we do in that lull? Sometimes we try and override that lull and do anyway. Other times we try and escape that lull because we don't like the way it feels, and so we, like watch crappy TV, or we sit and go out and have relationships, or we have other things. And what we're doing with all of those things is trying to avoid the idea that, avoid the thought that I won't ever find the flow again. I won't ever find creativity again. I won't ever find love again. I won't ever find, right? Like something took place that brought us to action. We identified with that action. It might have been years in which we've been identifying with that action, maybe having a certain job and having a certain identity and being in a state where we are always always able to identify with something. And when that happens, when we're identifying with something, we're not able to mature beyond it. We're not able, because we might be able to get better at it, right? You can be middle manager, and then I'm going to become a better middle manager, and how am I better? Because my numbers are better, and . But when you get disenfranchised with being a middle manager and you try to mature beyond that, well, now you're threatening your middle manager identity and maybe your job. But that's the natural cycle of maturation. You have to continue to grow. You have to find the stillness so that you can understand where it's coming from. And how do you do that? You be still. Whether you want to call that meditation or sitting quietly or whatever you want to call that, like, you just have to be still. Stillness is at the core of all that, because then it integrates with your body. I'm hoping all of you understand what this means. I'm hoping all of you have experienced this, where it's just like, I was identifying as something, I was becoming good at something, and then I hit a lull. And I tried to force myself through that lull, but that didn't really yield anything until eventually it did. But it wasn't me forcing it. It was time. And so being still, and that's why it says here, like, guarding that still mind, guarding that empty mind takes fervor. You need to put some effort towards guarding your empty mind so it doesn't just fill with a bunch of garbage, a bunch of identity, a bunch of, you at some other moment. Not you now. You now are being still. However, your identity is one who's not being still. And it's like, the integration of that, understanding that, that wasn't me wholly, that was part of me. And that's okay. It being a part of me, as just as well as this being a part of me, this stillness. But then we look around ourselves and we see everybody is praising one thing. They're praising productivity, while stillness is lazy. And yet, stillness is so important. And as we move into the last section here, it says, if stillness and integration cannot be achieved, constant action will lead to anxiety and wild movements. Why do you think everybody has, why do you think we've invested so heavily in anxiety drugs? Our society is full of anxiety. And marketing and advertising constantly telling you to buy things, and everybody selling their products and themselves and their identities and their brands. Like, everybody has been told for the last 10 years or so to be your own personal brand. And why do you want to be a brand? So your brand can sell products. So, like, the idea is, I'm going to come on here and I am going to talk about what's important to me and what I think health is. And then when I have your attention and other people notice I have your attention, I sell that attention to marketers. And then that's what we're doing. And so as we fill our lives, and I hope I never do that. I'm a Gen X and I believe that selling out is the worst thing that you can do. but that's me. And it is almost, especially in the first world, almost an ethical imperative that you sell to the highest bidder and you get the most out of every interaction that you partake in. And the thing is, when you're constantly acting, when you're constantly trying to get, when you're constantly trying to acquire, when you're constantly trying to do, when you're not taking any time for stillness and for being and for not being under the influence of things, when that is happening, it will lead to anxiety and wild movements. What do wild movements mean? It means bad decisions, really. It's just one bad decision after another. Anxiety, we all know what that is and how that feels within us personally. And that's like, oh, I got to do so much. But what's great is, like, for myself, I have moments where anxiety comes in, like I was thinking I have all of these things I got to do. And it's just like, oh, you know what? I can actually get rid of a couple of those things very easily if I just kind of sit down and focus. If I just have one conversation with somebody, then it's like, oh, then it's all done. That one conversation will get me to a place where I can just let it go. And that in which stillness will be able to be yielded. I'll be able to yield to stillness if I can get something off my plate, because I've had it on my plate. And even though I haven't accomplished it, I also haven't been still in not accomplishing it. So now it's about, like, okay, accomplish it. And if I don't care about it, take it off my plate completely. And that was the idea. The idea for me was, oh, I'm not going to do this now. But even though I say that, I still want to accomplish it. So just get it done. And I can literally get it done in 5 minutes. I just have to sit down and be focused to do it. Then when that state of action is done, I can yield that part of my mind that is currently not empty, because that is existing within it. I can allow that stillness. Those are things that take up space, like rent-free, right? We've all heard that, right? They're living in your head rent-free. This act, this task, this person, these things live in our minds rent-free. And when they live in there rent-free, this is what being empty of mind is of the utmost importance and is to be guarded with fervor. Like the first line of that talks about, don't let people, things, tasks live in your mind rent-free. Having that as a vacant space so that you can continue to mature is of the utmost importance. Now, action can fill that mind, like, right? Putting things on your list, states of action when you're in the process of something. That's why that's why I like the Tao so much, is because it talks about so many broad things. Being empty of mind is of the utmost importance and is to be guarded with fervor. We have all seen states of action arise, and always behind it returns stillness. Well, our minds can be activated and then return to stillness. Our lives can be activated and then return to stillness. Our days can return to stillness. At the end of the day, we go to sleep. Now, we can all talk about like what it means to be productive to us, but always the thing that's important isn't what's being done while we're being productive. It's what's being done while we're being still. That's the most important thing, because the productivity, it's just another thing. Everything's stupid. Everything is just out there being what it is, and that's fine. And we can, when we're inspired to do things, then we go and do them. And I always like to think like, well, what's the balance between all that? Are we still longer than we are active in our lives? My guess is yes. My guess is, and the problem with the world today, in the first world especially, is that we can feel active doing nothing and still not achieve stillness. So we could be engaging in podcasts and conversations and YouTube and news and music and art and driving and all of these things. And each and every one of those minutes robs us of a minute to be still. And what is stillness? You know, like, is stillness literally stillness? So much of those advertisements that we hear while we're listening to music, so much of the things that we engage while we're trying to just chill out or check out or whatever, right? All of those things are filling our mind with stuff. And so being empty of mind is of the utmost importance and is to be guarded with fervor. When it says that you should be guarded with fervor, that means that are you in a state in which your stillness is being co-opted by someone else? Is your stillness being, being harmed? Are you able to be still, or are you still living under the influence? Are you further being influenced by things around you? Because that time of stillness for you has been robbed by marketers and advertisers because you believed in the podcast that you were listening to, and you were attacked with an ad, right in the middle of it. You were just like, okay, now it's talking to me about, I don't know, drain cleaner or something. I don't know. It's like, and so you open yourself up to receive, and as soon as you do, you get hit with an ad. And is that what you want to receive? And is the person that you trusted on the other side of that ad, like, are they aware of that? And are they complicit in that? Because again, it's almost an ethical, it's almost like our ethical responsibility to get the most out of every interaction that we have today. Like, that's kind of how we look at things. Of course, I don't, or I try not to. I don't want to inundate you with ads. I hope you'd support me anyway. I don't want ads to support me, because that takes our relationship somewhere that I don't want it to go, right? I don't want your attention, and I don't want you to trust me and then me dump an ad in your lap for something that I don't even know is being advertised through my platform. Or even if I did know it, there's literally almost no product that I would support, so, at the Dow, there's the Dow, and you can get mine on my website, right? So there's always these things. There's always these things. But if my identity was, I don't want to do that, then I would be fighting myself. And so, like, always beyond those things returns stillness. Always beyond those things returns emptiness. It returns no identity. So once again, I don't want to be a person like that. Creates an identity that I have to eventually yield from, right? I have to separate myself from that identity and allow what is to be. because I can't just be one thing. I'm not just one thing. I am connected to all people. I'm connected to all things. Everything is possible through me. So even that, even though it's something that I, might have feelings about, those are judgments. And so being empty of mind is the utmost importance, no judgments. This is why we approach those judgments from this place of, I don't like that I do that. I don't like the idea of doing that, but then I also don't like the idea that I am closed off to it. So I keep myself open. By keeping myself open, I allow myself stillness within that and say, there are good things to all things. And I can be present with each of them without holding on to an identity and making a definition of what A plus B actually equals. So yielding to stillness makes one impartial, right? That's where we ended up next. Yielding to stillness, allowing myself to actually embrace the stillness, embrace the definitionlessness of life. I don't have to be this certain kind of person. I don't have to be this. I don't have to hold on to any certain identity. I can just allow it. I can allow it to be and allow it to unfold as it's going to without having to define it. So yielding to stillness, allowing that stillness to be, makes me impartial. And I don't have to, and because I'm impartial, I'm not judging. I don't have a desire. I've said this before. The moment you have a want, you can become a sucker. Because if you say, I want money, well, you're going to find somebody who's going to try and sell you money in one way or another, to sell you the idea that you'll have money if you pay them. If you do what they want you to do. Then you're living under the influence. Then you're being a sucker because you want something. And this is the whole idea of not wanting. When you get to not want, you get to be yourself, because you can't be fooled by other people and other things, right? Other ideas. Yielding to stillness. Even when you believe too much in the Tao, it has to be questioned. And the Tao doesn't care. That's the whole point. Tao doesn't care. Nature doesn't care. If nature cared, then, your wants, it would have wants and it would want you to be a certain way and it'd be upset. You think nature cares? Nature doesn't care. Everyone's running around saying, nature's so bad because it's so hot. Nature's so bad because it's, and then it's nature doesn't care. So we have to blame people that do care, right? People care. So now it's people's problems. And it's we find out that they don't care, or they do care. They care about money, or they care about power, or they care about the things that they care about. They don't care about what we care about. Yielding to stillness, yielding to that impartiality, yielding to this is the life that I'm leading. This is what's happening. If I'm upset, I need to act. And when I'm done acting, I need to be still. I can't constantly act, because once again, that will create anxiety and wild movements. Right. So I can't just act. And I think a lot of people, when they act from anger, and they say, I'm angry and I'm going to rail against the world, they think that stillness is actually going to be a thing that makes them weaker, while stillness is actually going to make them stronger and make them see clearer so that they can make better moves, right? So it's if you're working with, an activist group and their goal is to get you angry, they're not going to last very long, because everybody is going to eventually be worn out. Now, anger can work for some people, but stillness can work for everybody. So if you're angry, go ahead and take action until you're ready to be still. Once stillness takes hold of you, be still. Look at your anger. Look at what it's brought you. Look at where it's bringing you. Look at the problems that you have. Look inside of yourself to see if those resonate with you in terms of like how you've lived, the frames of reference you carry, and all of that. And when you yield to all of that and stillness takes hold, then you will mature to the next stage. Does that mean you're going to still work with this, activist group? Maybe not. But does that mean you're not going to be does that mean you're not going to be contributing more towards the peace that you want in your life or the outcome that you want? No, the outcome is going to be broader, and you will have taken the first steps towards healing consciousness beyond the physical, healing the consciousness of all things. I talked to a client the other day about this idea of like, I know you think that your implicit actions are making the change, but you can make deeper change by not putting it all out in the world and focusing on your life. When you focus on these problems within your life, these cyclical problems within your life, you are going to be aiding everybody. Now, the problem with that is that when you aid everybody because you deal with your own stuff, you don't have the conspicuous pats on the back. You don't have the conspicuous grading. You don't get the results. You don't get the praise. You just do it. And the problem with, I think, one of the issues with our world today is that we all want to get those pats on the back. We all want to get that work. We all want to be rewarded for doing the work that we do. But in life, doing work for yourself only rewards you with a better life. And that's a slow thing. It's not so easy. You need to be able to allow yourself space enough to be okay with not knowing exactly how you're affecting people, and know that you're affecting people anyway. Know that, this is when the Tao says the master trusts it's working through her. When you trust that Tao is working through you to make the world a better place, you simply make the world a better place by being. You're not like, am I making the world a better place? Am I getting a promotion? Am I getting a raise? Am I getting love in my life? Am I getting respect in my life? None of those things are important. If you give yourself respect, you don't need to get respect from others, and yet you will get it. If you love yourself, you will see and feel love from others, and yet you will get it. If you know that you're valuable, others, you're not going to necessarily get the same sort of value that people that trust the manifestation are going to get, but you're going to get it. And it will eventually express itself outwardly towards you. You will see it eventually, but you won't be able to say, oh, that came as a result of my valuing myself. You'll notice that eventually. But that's because you've matured. And you're not running around doing wild movements filled with anxiety. Yielding to stillness makes one impartial. You're not going to care. And all particular things fall away, right? The particulars of everything. This isn't about one or the other. This is the particular, like my ceiling, my meditation, my commission, all of these things that I'm working on. Those are particulars, and each one of those things is going to be completed in its own time. And when that happens, stillness can be achieved. Well, hopefully I can achieve stillness before then, but stillness in those actions. And then I'll have to learn what I learned. So I need to be able to be still so I can figure out what it is there was to learn there. And am I going to be able to, write a report as to what I learned after this book report, quote unquote, right? After these tasks I've been given with life? No, I won't be able to tell you what I learned. I probably won't. But regardless of me being able to express that, I will have learned anyway. So, well, I want to thank you guys for joining me. If anybody wants to come up and pick a number, I'd be happy to grab one. I can also, Melissa Brent's going to join me. Melissa, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I am well. Is this the first time we've spoken?
This is the first time we've spoken. I've listened quite a bit, and a lot of times what you say is way over my head, but I try to take it in anyway.
Oh, I try and make it really accessible, but I don't.
You just have very profound thoughts. Let me put it that way.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I'm glad. I'm glad I'm doing that. I used to, I'm coming out of addiction, and I mean, I got 23 years clean and sober, and so there was a time I was just a hoodlum on the street. So there's
I really identified. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, please.
I was really identifying with what you were saying this morning about the stillness and the anxiety, because I grew up in a very chaotic household. So I'm working on the stillness and not letting the anxiety override everything.
There's a lot of anxiety, it seems like.
Less than there was, but, we're all trying to do the best that we can. But I was really resonating with the stillness. Dr. Rao was talking the other day about silencing your thoughts, and so I sent a message. I'm like, how do you do that?
Dr. Rao is great. So Dr. Rao, he does such great work, and he and I are buddies. We met on this app, and we've been, we support each other. I think we both kind of talk about some of the same things. So, well, yeah, you're right on track.
The connection, because he was telling me, and it actually worked. He was like, before you go to sleep at night, write down all the things that you're thinking, kind of like do like a brain dump. That was, my paraphrasing, but it actually worked. I was like, wow, I went to sleep and my mind wasn't racing and I wasn't thinking about all the things I had to do the next day. So it's like, oh, there's some wisdom there. And it was connecting with what you were saying. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad you listened and that you resonate, and I'm glad that you're, taking action and, awareness of this anxiety, awareness that stillness is the thing that is going to bring, as it says in this number 16, stillness brings maturation. The natural cycle of maturation is learning from the action that took place and recognizing, when you're in action and when it's time to integrate that action, like when it's time for that action to sink in, as if you're constantly doing, if you're, our school system that we have is just like study, test, stop studying, right? Like, but there's no real space in there for it to really integrate. That's why when we graduate high school, we forget so much. We don't remember geography. We don't remember math. We don't remember all of these things until it becomes a part of our life. When it becomes a part of our life, there's enough time to let it just be still. So, I would love if you have the time and would like to pick a number between 1 and 81. We can find a Tao for you today.
Absolutely. How about number 14?
Number 14. So let's go ahead to 14. Hidden in plain sight. It's right in front of you. Like, really, that's what we're going to, what this is going to really show us. It's right in front of you, and yet you won't be able to see it. This may go over your head, but so not too long. So look, and there is nothing to see. Listen, and there is nothing to hear. Reach, and there is nothing to grasp. These three things come together. They combine and are one. This is a mystery and cannot be named. It is present within all manifestation and is forever returning to nothing. So subtle, it cannot be identified. So conspicuous, it is never hidden. Consider a time before history to show you how to yield. You cannot know if you're doing it. You cannot prove that you're doing it, but you can still be doing it. You're using it right now, but for what? So out of all that, did anything stand out to you?
The mystery part, I feel like, it was funny because you mentioned the school system, and I'm actually a teacher.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, I think of my students kind of like a mystery sometimes, like I have to solve that mystery of how can I best help this student. They're all different, and sometimes just being in a new role, a new position is kind of like a mystery too. So, I kind of think that life is kind of like a mystery. We're all trying to figure out, and you don't know what's around the corner. You can't really see what's coming, like your roof, that you were talking about.
Yeah.
We don't see those things. They just kind of happen. And I don't know if was the right takeaway from that, because like I said, sometimes just the thoughts are so profound. I'm like, wow, I really got to think about that.
Yeah. Well, you really, yeah. Like, and again, like the first verse of the Tao talks about the idea that words are particular. They can't express Tao. So we're only going to be pointing in the direction of Tao. I remember going on a swamp tour one time when I was in New Orleans. This is before Katrina. And I was early in my sobriety. I was early in my life of growth and all of this. And the guide said something very profound to me. And he said, I can tell you where it is, but I can't make you see it. Right. And it's like this idea of like what we're trying to do with the Tao Te Ching, with all this text, is point in the direction that you need to look. But that's the best we can do. We can't make you see this thing. And so as you're talking about the children in your class and stuff, look, and I want to go back to the text here. Look, and there's nothing to see. Listen, and there is nothing to hear. Reach, and there is nothing to grasp. So when you see a child, you can make an assumption about that child. But when you see a child, there's really nothing to see there. Because you can't really make an assumption about that child by looking at them.
True.
Listen, and there's nothing to hear. You can hear a child speak, maybe to their classmates, maybe to you, and there's nothing to hear. You can make an assumption about what that child is, but that's not going to be right either. Reach, and there is nothing to grasp. So whether you're grading them on their class and all of their things, you're reaching to try and see if you're making an impact, if you're doing your job.
Right.
But you can't you can't know that, because who knows what this child's doing? Maybe they are having something going on at home that is causing, because they are defending themselves, because they're constantly in a state of trauma, that you're not actually seeing this child. You're seeing the results of this child being bullied in school, being beat at home, being, like all of these things. And although you may look and you may see a child that's well-adjusted, you may listen and hear a child that's well-adjusted, you may reach and see a straight-A student, yet these three things, they combine eventually and make one thing. However, all of those individual things that you're looking at, the manifestation, all of the stuff, there's nothing there.
Wow. Like I said, mind blowing. I'm trying to, my brain has a hard time because, I'm used to seeing things in a certain kind of way, but I'm very thankful that you're here and that, just listening to you, and trying, like you said, words can't, and I struggle with that because I love words, but words can't often express the profound thoughts that you share. And so I think that's what I was trying to say before, is that it causes my brain to kind of like, stop and say, wait, what do we think about this?
Right.
And so being a lifelong lover of learning, I very much enjoy my brain stopping and being confronted with new perspectives and, different alternate, maybe not an alternate reality, but you know what I'm saying? Like a shift in thinking kind of thing. That my words are failing me this morning, but I hope I'm making sense.
No. Well, and that's the thing. Words are particular. They can't express really what's happening within you. And you don't have to, right? Because because we have an ability to connect without words. And if we can be quiet, we can recognize how subtly that affects us. Right. So I can sit here and I can understand what you mean. And I can kind of move on and say, this mystery cannot be named. And the thing is we're constantly trying to name it. We're constantly trying. But if you feel inside of yourself, like holy, right? Like that space just underneath your rib cage, there's often tension there, is my guess.
Oh, yeah.
And that's because that's like intuition, right? That's your body trying to be like, trust me. And you've given all of your trust up to your head. And your body is sitting here going, just calling out and saying, no. You can't see this child. You can't hear this child and you can't grasp this child that's in front of you. But if you are quiet and attend to the subtle in your body, you can feel what that child needs and who that child is. This is a mystery and cannot be named. It is present within all manifestation and forever returning to nothing, because you can feel them and then you can come back to yourself. And there's nothing there. And you are constantly connected to everything. So there's no identity. There's no you, there's no them, there's none of that. But that takes getting away from the conspicuous. That takes getting away from the grades. That takes getting away from the hierarchy of judgment and all of those things.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that you mentioned the word trust, because for me, that's something that I've really struggled with. And I'm sure it has something to do with like my upbringing, and I'm in therapy and I've been diagnosed with PTSD. So, it's no doubt there's some trust issues.
Yeah, right. And you being a teacher may very well be because you don't trust other adults with those children.
Wow. Never thought about it like that.
You're like, I'm the only one. And so the responsibility that you put on yourself to take care of these children is so intense that you're almost a prisoner of it.
Wow. It's amazing that you picked up on that after talking to me for only a few minutes.
No, that's kind of what I do, but
it is what you do. That's why I said I've been very impressed with what you do, and kind of not sure if I should jump in because didn't know if I could hold an intelligent conversation with you.
Well, I'm glad you feel that this is a safe space enough to do that,
the time.
And I really appreciate you coming up. I just want to kind of wrap up in this last minute that you're with me with the last section. Consider a time before history, meaning a time before words were written down. Consider a time before we wrote things down, before there was truth written down in a way to show you how to yield, how to let go to things. You can't actually know if you're doing anything. You can't actually prove that you're doing anything, but you still may be doing it. You're using Tao right now, but for what? And if you're using it for judgment, if you're using it to improve yourself, if you're using it to be greedy, if you're using it to even satisfy your distrust in the world, what are you using it for now? And that's the question. If you have another moment just to come back up, because you're going to get dropped off right about now, come back up. I do have a couple people in the queue, but if you want to come up and have a final say, like I would love to bring you up. Mukas, you're going to be next, and then Auntie Sparkle, or Sparky. I didn't look at it. So did you want to say anything more?
No, I just want to thank you. Like I said, I really appreciate your platform here. I appreciate your thoughts. And even though, like I got my big takeaway is that, like I said, life is kind of a mystery. And I love that. I think it kind of connects with what you were saying, is that I can kind of try to unravel that mystery in the stillness. That for me, I think I need to spend more time in that stillness for sure.
Yeah. The mystery is a nice place to be. So it's not comfortable, but it's a nice place to be.
No. But I got lots of fellow travelers with me that are helping me along the way.
Good. I'm glad. And I'm glad that I'm part of that.
You are. You're absolutely one of them. And I don't want to keep you from sharing that wisdom with the other people that are in the queue. So I will say thank you and have a wonderful day.
You as well. Well, Mukas stepped out. Auntie Sparkle is coming up. And then Terry stepped in. So thank you so much, Terry. Auntie Sparkly, how are you?
Hello, yes, my name is Auntie Sparkly, S-P-A-R-K.
Yeah, I forgot. I'm sorry.
It's okay. My number for the day is 98.
98. Well, we only go to 81.
Okay.
So I can add those two together for you and get you 17.
Oh, that's my favorite number.
17?
Mm-hmm. Can I say something?
Yeah. Go on.
About the, first I want to say good morning to you.
Oh, good morning.
And, my birthday's coming up. I'm so excited.
Oh,
on the 22nd.
On the 22nd. All right. Well, that's like celebrate all month. See.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I want to say to that young lady, Melissa, that she is loved. Like the Lord told me to tell her that.
Oh, well, that's a
she's
direct
loved.
message. Go on.
And that she that don't worry, do not panic, for God is with her. And that's what God told me to tell her.
Okay.
'Cause I'm a believer of Jesus.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah, and speaking of Jesus, this one is entitled "Of Masters and Leaders." In the time of the great masters, there were no leaders. Then those whom the people loved led the way. After having created the position of leader, the people feared their leaders. Then they despised them. Having created leaders, their faith in Tao was diminished. Having become a leader, his trust in the people was diminished. When there are great masters, there are no leaders. She works day and night and says nothing about it. When the work is done, the people say, "Amazing. We did it all by ourselves." What do you think?
I think that, like you said earlier, that in the beginning it wasn't no masters, and then they become leaders.
Well, there's a difference. There is often an interesting sort of thing that I've found with this verse. Masters, as it relates to the Tao, is someone who is a master of Tao, who understands the nature of the universe. Now, and this has happened with African American individuals with this verse specifically. When we talk about masters, and I do believe this has to do with slavery and other things, like masters in the context of African American diaspora, what we deal with is somebody who has control over you. And that is not what we mean by master here. This is when we talk about master, we talk about somebody who is in control of their own lives as it relates to the nature of Tao. And so the text, as it relates in this verse, can often get a little skewed, especially from an African American perspective, because you would want to be a leader. You would want to follow somebody rather than being forced to follow them, which is sort of the concept of master from the diaspora of the African American. So I want to just readdress the definition of master as it relates to the Tao. And I should take this into consideration when publishing this again. In the time of the great masters, meaning somebody who follows Tao, in a time before there was separation, in a time before people were different, there were no leaders. There was nobody to lead the way because everybody led themselves. Then after a time, those whom the people loved led the way. So it's like, I love Aunt Sparkly. I'm going to ask her advice. Auntie Sparkly is going to tell me her advice, and I'm going to go, oh, that's great advice. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to take that advice. Well, the next time I run across Auntie Sparkly, she's going to ask me how the advice went. And I'm going to go, that went really well. And she was like, great. What else do you have for me? And then I'm going to be like, well, actually, here's this other problem that's going on in my life. And you give me advice. And I think, that advice doesn't align with me as much as the first advice. But then Auntie Sparkly all of a sudden has a little bit of an attitude about her advice. You have to take my advice. I helped you before. And then I'm like, but I don't want to take your advice. And that's the cycle that we're starting to get into with this verse. Having created leaders, because I asked you your opinion, I lost faith in my own ability to come up with my own answers. Having become a leader, this is Auntie Sparkly became a leader because I asked her advice. Your trust in the people was diminished. Your trust in me coming up with my own advice, coming up with my own answer was diminished, was lessened because I took your advice and it worked out. Now you think you have the answers for me, but just like I don't have your answers, you don't have mine. Maybe once in a while I can tell you to do something and it works out. So that's the difference between masters and leaders here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see your point.
So, and then as this ends, it says, when there are great masters, and this is masters as it relates to Tao, there are no leaders. No one needs to lead the way. Now, if you ask me my advice and I give it to you, great, but I'm still not a leader. I'm still not guiding you. It's your life and you're living it. She works day and night and says nothing about it. She'll give advice. She'll do what she does. She'll break her back just so that she can continue living her life. And when the work is all done, the people say, everybody around her says, look, we did it all by ourselves. And yet the master just sits there and does the work. Doesn't ask others to be anything other than they are.
Right.
Yeah.
So in other words, it's saying sometimes, the master could do all the work. But the people who need to work, they need to work on their own path. There's a
Right.
difference in it, you know what I'm saying? Follow your own path. You can
That's right.
come to people for advice all the time, but they need to start on their own thing and like take baby steps and
That's right. Baby steps, like every day, like you have the opportunity to take another step. And if you don't take that step, no big deal. You have tomorrow. But every step you take is going to guide you towards more completeness. It's going to guide you towards more security. It's going to guide you towards more love of yourself. And that's why we take the baby steps. That's why we do that.
I see.
Oh, I love you, Auntie Sparkly.
I love you too.
Terry was in the queue. He's not anymore. So, but I want to thank you so much for coming up and us talking about this one. It's such a good one. And I've wanted to address that word master, because master has a lot of connotation, especially for those who have, generational history of slavery and other things like that. So I wanted to be able to address that. So I'm really grateful that we came up with 17.
Okay.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Right.
Okay, well, I'm going to wrap it up today. Thank you all so much for joining me. I really appreciate... Terry was trying to follow Melissa and accidentally joined. No big deal. I love that you are that you're out here, and I appreciate you guys. Melissa, Auntie Sparkly, and everybody that has been listening and here with me. I really appreciate you guys coming in. It's always nice to know that this show is resonating with individuals like Melissa and those that are out there. So I'll be continuing to do it. Until next time, keep recovering yourself.